Hello everybody, welcome back to Be Like Christ. We are going to talk about Matthew chapter 26 and do a summary in 5 minutes, hopefully. If you want the handout that you're about to see up on the screen, download link is in the description. Also a link to our Patreon account down there. So Matthew 26. When did the events of this chapter take place? This would have been at the latter part of somewhere between year 26 and 31 AD. The main characters in this chapter, Jesus is the main character, of course. His apostles, these are his closest companions who were with him all of the time. They're going to be present. One apostle in particular, Judas Iscariot, he is going to betray Jesus to the Jewish leadership. And then we're introduced to Caiaphas. Caiaphas was a wicked high priest who had Jesus arrested. Okay, where did the events of this chapter take place? Well, we start off in Bethany. Jesus is going to be anointed with oil in Bethany, and you can see that in the square highlighted on the map below. Jesus' apostles, they ate the Passover in Jerusalem. And then following the Passover, Jesus went to the Mount of Olives and then to the Garden of Gethsemane. This was just to the east of the city of Jerusalem, up on a hill, and he was arrested there in that garden. This chapter begins with a murder plot. The chief priests and the elders planned to kill Jesus, but they had to do it in a way that was secret because they didn't want to cause an uproar in the city. In verses 6 through 13, Jesus is anointed with oil in the town of Bethany. Jesus was at the house of a guy named Simon. Simon is described as being a leper, or he was a leper at one point. He had leprosy. Jesus is in this house, and there's this woman who comes up to him, and she starts anointing him with this very expensive ointment. Some of the disciples complained about this. They said, this ointment, it could have been sold for a lot of money, and a lot of poor people could have been blessed by that money. But Jesus commended the woman, and he said that anywhere that the gospel would be preached in the future, they would hear about the good deed that this woman had done to the Lord. Then Jesus goes to eat the Passover with his apostles, and he changes the memorial of the Passover to something else. This is verse 14 through 35. So Jesus, in this upper room, he ate the traditional Passover meal with his apostles, and he revealed that one of his apostles was going to betray him. He then changed the memorial of the Passover, remembering God's deliverance of the people from Egypt, to a remembrance of his death and what he was about to do for not only his apostles, but for the world on the cross. And then Jesus foretold that another one of his apostles, Peter, was going to deny him 3 times before the night was out. We have the events of the Mount of Olives and the Garden of Gethsemane in verses 36 through 46. Leaving the upper room with his apostles, Jesus went to the Mount of Olives. Jesus then left his apostles and he went a little ways away to pray by himself. He told his apostles to watch and pray, but they fell asleep, and 3 times he found them asleep. Now, one of his apostles wasn't there, and we find out the reason in verses 47 through 47 through 56. This is Judas's betrayal. So Judas had left the upper room, and he now arrives with a mob of men with swords and clubs to the Garden of Gethsemane. And he approached Jesus, and in that famous event, he kissed him, betraying him and his identity to the wicked Jewish people who wanted him dead. Peter actually attacked the mob with a sword, but Jesus told him to put his sword away. Jesus then announced that this arrest and what was about to happen to him was a fulfillment of the Old Testament scriptures. Section number 6, this is a long chapter, verse 57 through 68. Jesus is arrested and he goes through this phony trial. Jesus was taken to the high priest Caiaphas, and he was accused of blasphemy or mocking God. And the Jews had all these false witnesses who they had lined up to testify against Jesus. And in the end, they falsely accused him and condemned him to die. And they spit on him and they beat him and kept him under arrest through the night. And then finally, verses 69 through 75, we have Peter's denial. So Peter had followed Jesus after his arrest to the courtyard of the high priest. And when he was confronted about being one of Jesus' followers, he denied knowing Jesus 3 times. So what does this chapter help us to understand about the big picture of the Bible? Well, I think that it's really key here to understand that nothing about the night of Jesus' arrest was a surprise to Jesus. Jesus had repeatedly told his apostles that he was going to be arrested, that he was going to be killed, but then that he would rise again on the third day. And this was prophesied back in the Old Testament. So when you read the Old Testament, just keep in mind that this is what God is leading us towards. This is what he was leading the Jews towards, and this is the way that we need to understand the Bible, is that this is God's plan to save mankind. And the plan went exactly as God had always intended it to go. And then for our application, even God's enemies serve his purposes in the end. Think about it. The men who arrested and wanted to kill Jesus, they thought they were stopping his plan from coming to fruition. But in reality, God was using their stubborn hearts to accomplish his will. We can either serve God willingly or we can serve him unwillingly. If we serve him willingly, as good servants, then in the end we'll be rewarded. If we serve him unwillingly and he uses us in spite of our stubbornness and our rebellion against him, then we're going to be punished in the end.